Hello, my name is Gene McGee, and I'd like to share with you a little ordeal I went through on my boat. It's a Bayliner 2355. About the middle of 2013, I noticed that seemed to be some gasoline smell in the bilge. So I checked all the lines and checked a few other things, and eventually, after a little trial and error, I decided that yeah, the tank was really ruptured in some way. So I had to figure out what to do. The advice I got from Cape Marina was that the tank really has to be replaced. They had a pretty hefty price tag on it, so I decided to go ahead and do it myself. This first picture you see is a before and after of the engine area. Before on the left is what the old tank looked like, and on the right the new one eventually looked like at the end of things. You can tell I put a nice little bar in there. I could stand on that little white spot there. The next photo is of the actual bilge and some of the gasoline that was sitting in there. I used to work on ships, so I kind of, and it was oil tankers, so it used to be a big deal. If you smelled gasoline, you paid a lot of attention to it. There's another shot of the bilge, just a little bit cleaner. I put a little rag in the bilge pipe there, the limber hole actually. It seemed to stop for a little while, but that bulkhead you see on the left actually turned out to be pretty well rotten, and that water that got between the tank and the bulkhead is what caused the tank to corrode. There's some more of the bilge. You can see that there was some gasoline in there. This is just a nameplate on the old tank. It was a 55-gallon tank. I wound up getting the boat back to the marina from the condo I live in. It was quite an ordeal to get the boat back onto the trailer, and they had this interesting little way of doing it with a forklift and some straps. It's a closer shot of them using the straps. There's yours truly there trying to work the winch on the boat. Closer shot of the winch. The boat was in Cape Canaveral, and I live in Virginia, so I had to bring it back, and here's one of the first days it snowed with the boat back at the house. And here's a shot of the engine that you saw originally. What I'm doing here is you can see that black hose going into the level sender hole. I used a leaf blower and taped it up and blew air into the tank to be very sure there was no gasoline fumes. There's the leaf blower and my handy little duct tape arrangement there. Now this is the aft cabin. It's not a true aft cabin like a motor yacht, but it's a small area where you can sleep back there. And this deck is where the belly tank is underneath. Kind of looking aft a little bit now, and the engine compartment is at the top of the picture there. So I started cutting through that bulkhead and found the tank. Sure enough was there. It was covered with a white piece of plastic. And this is one of the first shots of the cutting I was doing. Skill saw worked pretty well. There's a skill saw on the top of the shot. That's the aft bulkhead there. On the other side is the engine room. I had to cut through that also so that the tank fill fitting could fit all the way through, and when I angled the tank up it had to be able to fit through. Another shot of that aft bulkhead. I was testing to see with the carpeting ripping off the wall there how it would look. This is looking at the forward bulkhead of the aft cabin there, and you can see there's a bulkhead just forward of the tank, and I had to figure out how to deal with that. Here I went ahead and cut through to the engine compartment. You can see there's plenty of room to pull the tank out now. I used the skill saw. I didn't use that jigsaw. I used the skill saw to make the cut. It was much better that way because you can set it just for the half inch you need for the marine plywood. Here's my old floor jack. I was going to use this to pull out the tank. I used a big spud bar. You can see it on the end of the jack there. And I first tried a rope. The rope didn't work very well, and the jack is an old jack, and it kind of gave out also. Here I am with a new jack and spud bar arrangement. That tank was very difficult to lift out. Bayliner apparently put it in very tightly, and they fiberglassed the tank in around the edges, which is exactly what you're not supposed to do because it traps all the water, and that's why the tank rots. You can see just, this is where I put a chain on it because it was getting more difficult to pull out, but you can see just to the right of the chain where I had to whack out all the fiberglass that was holding the tank in. Did that with a hammer and chisel. Here it is, getting a lot of tension on that wire, actually shear I guess on the bar, and it wouldn't budge. So I got a little bit stronger grip on it and still couldn't make it go, and you can see the deflection in the bar was getting pretty bad there. Then I decided I really needed to pull from the center of the tank, so I started yanking on that. At that point I realized that the aft bulkhead was also rotted, so I cut through that and it gave me a little bit more room to play with. After I cut through the bulkhead, the tank started coming out. You can see here that it's just starting to lift free. And there's another shot of it actually coming out. I'd done a calculation where the tank should have come out through the cabin area. Originally, the marina told me they'd have to pull the engine out to get the tank out. But my calculations were correct, so I was able to get the tank out through the cabin. That's the first look at what's underneath the tank there, just a little platform. I pulled the tank out through the cabin and put it in the backyard there and took a good look at it. Here's another shot of it, sideways. Here it is upside down. I had to cut the tank in half to dispose of it. I sent it to a recycler. Got $25 for it. There's a shot of the, apparently that's a vent pipe inside the fuel tank. And it allows you to fill the tank up completely because the air would flow through that even if the boat was down by the stern a little bit. There's another shot of that vent hole, that vent pipe. Here's a shot of the actual corrosion, and this was right behind that rotted bulkhead, a little bit on the port side. Yeah, there's a better shot. You can see it just ate through just like acid was poured on it. There's a shot of that whole line there. I guess the corrosion was actually on the starboard side. There's a good shot of how I guess the water just eats it, combines with salt or something. There I am back in the compartment where the tank was, and realized I had to start working on that bulkhead. So I did some research on the internet, and if anyone's interested, there's a good website on YouTube. Just look up Frisco Jarrett's. He did an amazing amount of work on I think a 22-foot Sea Ray. I learned a lot on how to do fiberglass work from him. This is another shot of that forward bulkhead. I had to figure out what to do with that. I realized later on that the compartment for the tank was its own compartment. There was no bilge, there was no limber hole for the bilge, so the water could pass from the bow through to the engine compartment. So I figured that they left that gap there to allow air to pass in through to the fuel tank area. That's a shot of the forward bulkhead at the bottom. There is no hole there. After I started grinding away at the old bulkhead, it was obvious that marine plywood was kind of messed up. And there was some more shots of the rotted plywood. And here I really went to town with my angle grinder and created quite a mess. But I wound up grinding down the entire bulkhead and rounding out the area where it hit the hull. There's another shot of it on the port side. You can see where the engine mounts come through there. They were rotted a little bit, but not too bad at all. The rot did go into the main stringers, but they didn't go too far, and I was able to put some epoxy in there to strengthen it up. There's a good shot of the port engine mount. That was a little bit rotted. You'll also notice a little dark spot there in the upper right-hand corner of the picture. I actually ground right through to the bottom. So that was going to be a test to see if I could fix that hole. Another shot on the starboard side. And there's yours truly, all suited up and ready to do the grinding. The personal protective equipment was very important, so I got a really good mask, ear protection, and goggles, of course. And the Tyvek suit helped quite a bit. Although, you wind up getting the fiberglass pieces in your pores. You get used to it after a while. It washes out after a couple of days. Here it is all vacuumed and cleaned, ready for starting the fiberglass. It's a full shot of it there. That's the starboard side. You can see I actually ground into the stringer to be sure that I could get a good support. Here's my first shot at fiberglass work. I had to order the fiberglass. Most of it I got from U.S. Composites. I went to Lowe's and got the gallons of, I wound up using about 2.5 gallons of fiberglass resin. Frisco Jarrett's was pretty good about it. He recommended 1/2 ounce chop strand mat. That's for strength, and then the 1708 is a very good product, and that's what I used as the final build-up for the fiberglass. What you see there now is my first shot at fiberglass, and I just laid it in where the bulkhead actually sat before. For some reason it was very deep there. That's part why I ground through, so I was concerned about making sure that I had enough strength. So after I fixed the hole first, and then I laid a couple of layers of chop strand mat and then the 1708 on top of that. And I ground out the limber hole tube. Decided that I'd go ahead and put a larger kind of like mouse hole there to be sure that I had enough airflow going through the tank area. I found some very good marine plywood from a local lumberyard, actually, and it was a pretty good price. I was surprised how inexpensive it was. You can see the mouse hole I cut there, and I didn't quite fit it in perfectly, but some good fiberglass work that made up the difference. There it is with the fiberglass starting to put in there. What you have to do is mix up what they call peanut butter. Take the regular resin, go ahead and mix in the hardener right away. Now, you don't want to mix in too much hardener because you want this to take quite a while to harden up on you. So after you put the hardener in, then you put in some chopped strands, like 1/4-inch little pieces of fiberglass. And that gives it strength. It doesn't really make it thick, but it gives it a little bit of strength. You don't want to put too much of that in. And then you go ahead and put in some Cabasil, or they call it fumed silica. And it's this little light, fluffy stuff that you add, and that's what actually makes the thickening. This is my first shot at it, and I didn't do a very good job, so it was a little bit too runny. So when you do mix that up, make sure it actually turns into peanut butter. It even looks like peanut butter. It's got the color of peanut butter. And so when you stir it, it actually keeps its shape. You can pull a little divot right through it, and it stays that way. On the right-hand side there, I didn't do that the first shot, so it got a little. I got a little scared to think that I may have to take it out and redo it. But after 24 hours, it actually did harden up anyway. And then I had to actually order the tank. I got it from Car Industries in Tampa. Checked a couple of prices in a few places. This guy was actually very good. His price was the best, and he wound up giving me a good tank. All my measurements that I tried to do and triangulate and use trigonometry didn't work too well, so I just wound up doing a template. Again, Frisco Jarrett suggested using templates, so that worked out pretty good. Got this little foam board and then cut it up and fit it in there nicely, and I knew exactly what size tank I had to get. There's another shot of the template. I did one for the crossways and one for the lengthways. There is the bulkhead after I started tabbing in. So I told you I did the peanut butter, which is laying in a round kind of piece of fiberglass, so that when you do lay in your cloth or your 1708, it'll actually follow a nice round contour, and that gives it the strength. It's called tabbing in with the 1708. So you lay in a small tab first, then you lay in a second tab on top of it, a larger one. And I forgot to tell you that I prepared the bulkhead ahead of time by putting 2 layers of chop strand mat on it. Here's the new tank when it arrived. It came in the mail. It was a pretty decent price, and I bought these tank mounts. They're closed cell foam mounts. Check them on the internet. You can find them pretty easily. They were a little bit thinner than I wanted them to be. I wanted them to be about 1/4 inch. They weren't quite that much, but I figured they would do just well. I put them right where they'd actual touch, and so they had a lot of room for air to move underneath. And that's probably the key to keep the tank in good shape, is to let the air flow through it. When I ordered the tank, I got a larger tank. I think the original tank was 22 millimeters, and this one was like 26 or something, 1/8 inch, I guess. Can't remember right now, but it's a thicker walled tank. And it's covered with an epoxy coating. The size that I got was just a little bit smaller than the compartment, so I can be very sure that air was circulating around the tank, and that should prevent any corrosion in the future. And since I had enough room on top of the tank before the deck goes back in, I actually got a bigger tank, so it's a 65 instead of a 55-gallon tank. There's the tank sideways in the garage. And I decided to take a few pictures of getting the tank in this time. The other one came out, this one should go in, right? And there it is down in the cabin. And there it is getting pushed back into the aft cabin. And there it is being slid down in. So I just did this little test to slide it in like this, and after that I used the 5200, the 3M glue that's waterproof. It's extremely strong stuff. It's very good. 3M 5200. Make sure you get some of that if you're going to do this. And I laid some glue on the rubber supports underneath, so that when it slid down in, the bottom of it was going to be glued in fairly tightly. And there you can see that it's down in. It's already glued. You can see that the edges have about 1 inch or so clearance to allow the air to go around. Now my idea was to block it in like this. The tank manufacturer actually said you should foam in the corners, but I heard that foaming in is what causes some of the corrosion, so I decided to leave as much air as possible. I just went to Lowe's and got some of this plastic baseboard material. It's like about 1/2 inch thick and 1.25 inches wide. It's just little pieces of plastic, and you can cut them and size them up, and I stuck them in there and used the 5200 to glue them in tightly. So 2 on each corner and 1 on each of the long run there on the top and back by the new bulkhead. Where the engine mounts came through, I put a support there also, so that if the tank did get under a lot of force and try to move aft, it would hit that support and not go anywhere. And here it was. I took the rest of the plywood and cut that to fit the hole and made it so that it overlapped on top of the stringer, so the old plywood is half on a stringer and the new plywood is half on a stringer. This also had some chop strand mat on it for strength. I knew I wanted this to be very strong because it was going to be part of the strength of the boat, and I didn't want to be bouncing around when I'm sleeping there at night. And I had to figure out what to do with that hole in the back. What I decided to do was put a backing on it. So from the inside of the engine compartment, I put a piece of 1/2-inch plywood and oversized it to cover the hole. And that left me with a nice little channel that I later filled in with another piece of marine plywood, 1/2-inch marine plywood. And the gap was a gap there, so I put a lot of peanut butter in, and it worked out very well. I think it's very strong. I also bought some 4-inch cloth. Cloth is just like cotton cloth, but it's fiberglass. After doing the peanut butter, I laid the cloth on top of that, and I laid the cloth up into the bulkhead area also. And after I did a lot of sanding and smoothing out, and I sanded down the entire deck, I put in some gel coat, and you have to get wax for it. So I got the kind that was unwaxed, and then put the wax in. I guess the idea is you can put gel coat in without the wax, and you can sand it down and really work. And then your final coat you put on is a waxed gel coat, and it is very slick and smooth. It was a very nice job. And here it is all finished. I was very pleased that the aft bulkhead that I ripped up the carpeting from really turned out to be pretty good. I bought some spray adhesive from Lowe's, and I just sprayed it on the back of the carpet and on that bulkhead that I created, and just pressed it all back in. It went in pretty good. There's the cushion back in place, and it looks pretty nice. There's another shot of the port side. I was really pretty amazed that the carpeting didn't get all messed up. Then I wanted to do one final thing, is put that covering on the bulkhead in the engine compartment, because I thought that was probably one of the reasons that the bulkhead was rotten, was because there was no cover on it, and when water got in there, it would actually soak into the wood. So I decided to go ahead and do that, and I cut this channel with a piece of 2x4. I wound up cutting it a little bit too deep and had to cut it again to make that channel a little bit shallower. Okay, well that's pretty much it. If you ever try to do something like this, it can be done. I did it on weekends over a couple of months. You can see I started it when it was cold, and then it was actually got to use the boat in the 2013 season. Just 2 more trips out in the Potomac. Well, good luck if you give it a try. Bye now.